I think not just that. She would sit with me, after school, she'd meet me. We'd go to the comedy club. We'd sit there all night. We'd eat fried
mom would
food.
go to the comedy club
after
with you.
she had been working or doing whatever it was she did that day. And I didn't realize it at the time, but, she's a mom. She was auditing the scene. Now, I don't think she necessarily thought I was going to be a famous comedian, but at that time, the crack epidemic and everything, all the bad things I could be doing, and I expressed such this earnest interest in being a comedian, and so she shepherded me. She figured out who's trustworthy and not trustworthy, and okay, could you come give my baby a ride home if I leave early, and that kind of thing. And then by the time I was 16, I was a professional. Like I would get gigs and make money, and I didn't need her to go as much. And then that was kind of sad because her baby was growing up. But the big one was not going to college, because I'm the first person since slavery in our family to make that choice. Like everyone's
educated. Dave. Way to break the cycle of education.
Someone needs to break this cycle of learning. But I ended up moving to New York, and honestly, maybe it was the best education a person could ever get. But the guardrails of that education was ambition, not just like really artistic ambition. I was enamored. I always looked at comedy like, what else can it do? And I still experiment with it, which is more dangerous now, but no less rewarding. This job never gets easier. It's never not fulfilling, and it's never not challenging.
So at 16, you're a professional on the road, on your own. Who were your influences? Did you have any mentors? Did you do it solely by yourself?
No. Okay, so the local scene in D.C. was popping. Like I said, Patton, who went on to be famous, he was there. A guy named Tony Woods was one of the big guys on the scene. BET had just started, and it was local in DEC, so Chris Thomas was doing all these things on BET. Tommy Davidson was on In Living Color, but he was from our local scene. Martin Lawrence was just getting big, but these were all local guys. So I wasn't on the road yet. I would get a road gig here or there, but and the principal at Ellington used to give me excused absences if I left on Friday to go on the road, because it was an artistic pursuit. And I'd catch the train up the Eastern Seaboard and get a gig here or there. But it was mostly happening in town, in Washington. And the scene was very experimental and very competitive, but there was a lot of camaraderie on that scene. New York was different, but man, D.C. was, I think, the perfect place to start, because I had enough room to get good.
Is there a point in a comedian's development where they determine what kind of comic they want to be? I mean, you are a gifted storyteller, weaving in life and observation and, taking us full circle. Did you have to become that? Did you know that as a kid that's how I want to make people laugh?
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
No, that's like a very good question. There are certain, people ask me, who are your favorite comedians? And it's not like that. In my mind, it's a dunk reel of just different comedians doing different things that amaze me. Some more consistently than others. But, man, any night it could be just some guy who just says the thing of that night. But, man, when I was in high school, and I can't remember who I saw do it first, the first time I saw a guy do what we call back a joke, make reference to something he referenced before, I'm like, wait a minute. You do the same joke twice? And from then on, man, I'm telling you, I'm like those guys that can draw a perfect circle freehand. If I went on stage with no material, I would just know what to do. But I've been doing this so long, comedy, it's almost like a language that I know how to speak. I can say anything in this language, but there are real parameters, and it's like music. You also want to break out of those parameters. like a bebop guy. Like, I don't want to play the same stuff everybody plays. But that being said, man, in my life, man, I've seen some of the greatest comedy ever done, and I feel so lucky to have seen all of it. But what made me want to be what I'm like is a long story. Can I tell it?
Please. This is your interview, Dave Chappelle. Please take your time.
I
Tell
have
us
so
slowly.
many questions. It feels dumb talking about myself around y'all, but I'll try. Okay, the single most impactful thing that I've ever seen. I was maybe 19 years old. I opened for Richard Pryor at Newark Symphony Hall, and I got there early, and I met Mr. Pryor before the show, and I could see, like, I was eyeballing him, that he wasn't feeling well. Now, by this time, everyone knew he had MS and all that. I just don't know what MS does to people, but I knew that whatever it does, it was doing it. And so I say to myself, you know what? Like, I want to do good, but let me just take it easy because it's like a legend. So I just did the housekeeping job. I got the crowd good and warm, and they didn't want to see me anyway. They wanted to see him. And then I go and I get off the stage. He had the intro where his man goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, the most two beautiful words in comedy, Richard Pryor." Man, crowd goes nuts. And he goes out there, and you could tell early on that this was not his night. And maybe 30 minutes into his set, he stops, and it's something I wouldn't even know you could do. He looks at the crowd and he goes, "Look," he goes, "I want to do this for you guys," but he goes, "I'm not feeling well." He said, "I'm sorry." He goes, "I don't got it in me tonight. I'm sorry." Just like that. And man, you could hear like a pin drop. And then this guy in the back of the room jumps to his feet like that. He jumps up. He goes, "We love you, Richard." And the place exploded. Longest, loudest ovation. Like, man, it went on, and he stood there. And then, okay, I'm young, right? But then I realized what I'm looking at, that this is his last show for them. They probably will never see him live again. And people were crying and wiping tears out their eyes, and he looked a little emotional. And to me, it was the first time I had seen like actual love, like bouncing off the walls. Like, man, they love this person. And if I had never seen that, I wouldn't even know that's something to want, because no one has it like Richard like that. And when I saw that, more than any type of style, I'm like, man, I want to be like that. And that notion made me work, I think, more patiently than I would have. But that was the moment I knew that fame was one of the things I wanted. But whatever the hell that thing Richard had, that moment.
So then, what does it feel like when it doesn't work? You know?
Now it does. Now, man, okay, this is a good question. You mean like if I do a show and it doesn't go well?
You know that, and when the love doesn't come and the opposite comes.
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be both and.
Yeah, maybe it's more like, in my experience, it was both, because I was doing jokes that some people thought were controversial and some people didn't. But that experience, from my perspective, is much different than what it must have been like watching it. Because, listen, people would think it's me versus the gay community. I never looked at it like that. I always thought it was corporate interest and culture negotiating itself. So, most of those people who were critical of what I was doing didn't seem like they were of it. It's like they had their faces pressed against the glass, commenting on what we were doing in there, but they weren't in there doing it. And like I think I spoke to you about this earlier. Every opinion you can think of is represented in a comedy club. Every type of person you can imagine does stand-up comedy, transgender stand-up comics, black, white, Asian, every kind of perspective. And we all champion whatever opinion we champion. We would never think to silence one another. We might duke it out on stage in the sense of like, if someone says something racist and I get mad, I'll be like, yo, put me up next, because I want to say something about what they said. But silencing that person wouldn't be anything. And then after the show, we all be upstairs drinking, and we might still talk about it or argue about it. But that's our life, and we're artists, and that's what we do, and we have this outlet. So for a media outlet to speculate on a comedy show that they weren't at, or misinterpret a joke, or like, nothing makes a comedian madder than reading his joke wrong in the paper. And reading a joke is nothing like hearing one or being one. And the intention of a comedy show is a very unique intention. We are playing with whatever the culture is made of, and we break it down, and we get it right or we get it wrong. But in all art, if it's going to be good or even hopefully great, you got to have a margin of error. And what they were doing was acting like thought or speech was binary. Like there's everything's either this or that, but all art is in between that. It's all nuance. So when they take nuance out of words and just like, did you hear what he said? He said, it's like, yeah, but that's not what I was saying. Yeah.
So we talked about, the first time I realized, oh my gosh, I'm in politics, was, my husband's running for president. I was campaigning heavily for him, but my experiences campaigning were in communities like this. It started small and then it grew from there. And all my conversations would be like this, extemporaneous, talking to a group, introducing myself, telling a joke, trying to humanize myself and my husband, introducing us as real people, but not on script. And there's a difference in how you would see the crowd respond right here. We're all in the room together. Maybe the words wouldn't be exact, but we would all be able to feel it. And that feeling wouldn't just be a small group. It could expand into a stadium, an arena. The people there could feel the intent. But then I realized, it's not about the people here. It's about the people with their faces pressed against the wall, interpreting what I said without being there.
Right. Or even more insidious, trying to bend what you say to make it more interesting or salacious or because they have a different, I don't know. I don't know why they do all the stuff they do, but I do know in recent years, it's, you'll hear a lot of comedians complain about that. And what they'll say is, we can't say anything. That's not true. Mm-hmm. You can say anything that you can get away with.
Right.
And that's the skill. Yeah. The negotiation with the audience of what's acceptable is what makes the genre so interesting. And it could change from room to room, night to night. Like every room's a little different.
Well, you said younger comedians are a little bit different because they're not, their audience isn't in their room.
No, they're internet people.
They're internet people. And, it goes back to, the whole point of community. It's like sharing a space with people is really important to connection and understanding. And it's no wonder why we feel so divided, is because all of our interaction is happening without this heart-to-heart feeling, this even seeing somebody's face nod and, oh, you get it, or maybe you don't. We're losing that. And you said young comedians nowadays have a different ethos because they're not in the room.
Negative too.
Yeah.
Because that gets more engagement. If they talk bad about somebody, they'll get more clicks and more engagement. So everything's a diss record now, and it used to be. It's not like that.
Can we talk about the Chappelle show?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, really.
I just the when I think about you doing that show, I think about how much fun it must have been just sitting around with your friends and your boys thinking up ideas to be on the Chappelle show.
Man, that's the truth. I had one guy that I primarily wrote the show with, Neil Brennan, and we're still friends. But one of the things we would do is we would take submissions. We'd always rewrite the submissions, but the guy would give us an idea, like, oh, that's funny, we'll write it up. And if we use it, we pay him. But it was
if I had
also,
known that was the thing, I would have been submitting some stuff.
Man, it was funny because it was my first time being corporately funny, and it got me ready for the next time because it was always a negotiation with the network. But I liked, in hindsight, because we had pitched that show to HBO, and boy, they turned it down in spectacular fashion. Because at that time they had the Chris Rock show and they felt like they were invincible. Man, but we went on Comedy Central and shot lights out. And I think the show was better on Comedy Central because there was an era of you shouldn't be able to say these things. Mm-hmm. HBO looked like you just do anything anyway. But on Comedy Central, that dance around standards and practices was joyful. And shout out to South Park. Because I remember one time I did a Tyrone Bigum's a character I play on the show who had an addiction problem. Well, there's no nice way to say it, Craig. He takes a shit in the alley.
Yeah.
And the Renee, the standards and practices lady, calls me upstairs and she's like, "Look, you can't have Tyrone take a shit in the alley." And it was gross too because we took like a baby Ruth bar and like melted it, and then we just dropped it in the frame. It was really gross. And I was
really funny. Really funny.
She goes, "You can't do that. You can't do that." And I go, "I don't know. I go, how about this, Renee? What if I put a Christmas hat on it and make it sing a Christmas carol?" And then she goes, okay. So we got away with a lot of stuff because South Park pushed boundaries and people got away with stuff because we pushed boundaries. But it was all about just kind of, making room for everything. And to their credit, especially at that time, television was governed the opposite of the internet. It was called least objectionable programming. How do we make sure everybody likes everything everyone says? And that's obviously impossible. But they were brave in the sense that they would let us challenge a lot of convention. Chappelle show was fun. Charlie Murphy.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Really?
May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
I used to see Charlie Murphy in Hollywood at parties. I shouldn't say this, but one night, I'm sorry, Mom, I was high on mushrooms, and I went to some place.
He's okay now, though.
Yeah, and I'm fine. But I say that to say, if you were high on mushrooms and ran into a personality as intense as Charlie Murphy, it's like daunting. He talks to his teeth and, "Hey, what's going on, man?" And he's real gangster and he got that growl. But man, this one night I ran into him and the whole night just became about watching this guy, Charlie Murphy. Now, I didn't know in the near future we would work together in such an intimate capacity, but that night I could see something great about him. And he would always talk about Eddie, but he always go, my brother, this, my. And if anyone said anything bad about Eddie at any point in his life, he'd smack the shit out of him. He loved his brother so much. And but what I learned that night, because he was always a villain in movies, he was hilarious. He was like a artful storyteller. Yeah. All his stories had all this texture. And then one day on the set, we were doing some sketch, and Charlie was telling us all these stories about coming with Eddie. And in the middle of the lunch, he goes, Someone said something about Rick James, and he said, "Man, I fought Rick James on 5 different occasions." And we were like, "What?" And man, he started telling us all the times in every story he beat up Rick James and all this. And man, we were dying laughing. And we pull him aside and like, "Man, can we do that on the show?" He's like, "Wait, you want me to beat up Rick James on the show?" I'm like, "Not really." Like, and we just had him tell the stories. And we dramatize them. Now you think, and then as we're shooting it, like, yo, this is like, because we were on set dying laughing. And then here's the kicker, and we're on the set, and Charlie goes, "I bet you I can get Rick to come for this."
I was just about to close my laptop. I really was. The screen was dimming, my hand was on the mouse, and I had already said goodnight to the room. But then I saw the title. Dave Chappelle on I Can Say Anything in This Language. And I stopped. I stopped because language is power. Language is freedom. Language is the tool we use to shape the world, to express our deepest truths, to connect with each other across all the things that divide us. And Dave Chappelle, a man who has mastered the art of language, a man who has used words to make us laugh and cry and think and rage, a man who has been censored and celebrated and misunderstood and loved. He was going to talk about what it means to have a language where you can say anything, where there are no limits, no filters, no fear. So I clicked. And now here I am, hours later, because this video took me on a journey I didn't know I needed, a journey through the power of words, the weight of truth, and the liberation that comes when you can finally speak your mind. Let me tell you about it. Let me walk you through it, every single minute of it. The video starts quietly. No music, no flashy graphics, just Dave. He's sitting on a couch, not a fancy couch, a comfortable couch, the kind you sink into. He's wearing a simple hoodie, no hat, no sunglasses, no jewelry. He looks different, softer, more human. He's not looking at the camera. He's looking down at his hands. He's thinking. He's remembering. And then he starts talking. His voice is low, quiet, not the voice he uses on stage, a private voice, a voice he doesn't share with the world very often. He says, "I've been thinking a lot about language, about the words we use, about the words we're afraid to use, about the words that get us in trouble, and the words that set us free. And I've realized that the most important language I have is not English. It's not comedy. It's not the language of jokes and punchlines. It's the language of truth, the language of honesty, the language of being real. And in that language, I can say anything. Because truth doesn't need permission. Truth doesn't need approval. Truth just is. And when you speak truth, when you really speak it, you're not afraid anymore. You're not worried about who's listening. You're not worried about what they'll think. You're just speaking. You're just being. You're just free." He pauses. He looks up. He's looking at the camera now. Right at me. Right at you. He says, "Most people are afraid to speak truth. They're afraid of the consequences. They're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of being canceled. They're afraid of losing their jobs, their friends, their reputations. And I understand that. I've been afraid too. I've been afraid of what people would say. I've been afraid of losing everything I've built. But I've learned that the cost of silence is higher than the cost of truth. The cost of staying quiet is your soul. The cost of hiding is your freedom. And once you pay that price, you never get it back." I felt that in my chest, because how many of us have stayed silent when we should have spoken? How many of us have swallowed our truth because we were afraid of the consequences? How many of us have traded our freedom for safety, for approval, for belonging? And what did we lose in the process? A piece of ourselves, a piece of our soul. He says, "I grew up in a world where I couldn't say everything, not because I was afraid, because the world wouldn't let me. The world had rules, the world had limits, the world had boxes that I was supposed to fit in, and if I said the wrong thing, if I stepped out of line, I would be punished. So I learned to watch my words. I learned to code switch. I learned to say what people wanted to hear. And it worked. For a while. but it also made me feel small. Made me feel like I was performing even when I wasn't on stage. He shifts on the couch. He pulls his knees up. He looks smaller, younger, more vulnerable. He says, "Then I discovered comedy. I discovered that on stage, I could say things that I couldn't say anywhere else. I could tell the truth. I could be real. I could be myself." And people laughed. Not because I was being funny, because I was being honest. Because they recognized themselves in my truth. They recognized their own fears, their own struggles, their own hidden thoughts. And in that recognition, we connected. We laughed together. We healed together. We became human together. He leans forward. His voice gets softer, more intense. He says, "That's the power of language. That's the power of truth. It connects us. It heals us. It sets us free. And when you find a language where you can say anything, where you can be anyone, where you can speak your deepest truth without fear, that's sacred. That's holy. That's the closest thing to God that I've ever experienced." He pauses. He takes a breath. He looks at the camera. He says, "I've been criticized for the things I've said. People have called me names. People have tried to cancel me. People have written articles and made videos and started petitions. And I've seen it all. I've felt it all. But I've never stopped speaking. Because I know that the truth is worth the cost. I know that being real is worth the risk. I know that my freedom is worth more than their approval. And I wouldn't trade it. Not for anything." He wipes his eyes. He doesn't hide it. He says, "I think about the young people who watch me, the ones who are trying to find their voice, the ones who are afraid to speak up, the ones who are hiding who they really are. I want them to know that it's okay to speak. It's okay to be real. It's okay to say what you think, even if people disagree, even if people get angry, even if people try to silence you, because your voice matters, your truth matters, your freedom matters, and you deserve to be heard." He looks at the camera, straight into it. He says, "The language I speak, the language of truth, it's not easy, it's not comfortable, it's not safe, but it's real, it's honest, it's alive. And in that language, I can say anything. I can talk about race, I can talk about politics, I can talk about pain, I can talk about love, I can talk about fear, I can talk about hope, I can talk about everything that matters. And I don't have to filter myself. I don't have to edit myself. I don't have to perform. I just have to be. And that's the greatest gift. That's the greatest freedom. That's the greatest power." He reaches out. His hand touches the camera. The video ends. And I'm just sitting here, in the dark, my living room, my blanket, my cold tea, my tired eyes, my wet cheeks, thinking about Dave Chappelle, about the language of truth, about the courage it takes to speak it, about the freedom that comes when you do. I think about what he said about silence costing your soul. That's a heavy truth, a scary truth, but it's true. Every time we stay silent when we should speak, we lose a little piece of ourselves. We trade our authenticity for safety, our freedom for approval, our truth for belonging, and the price is too high. The price is always too high. I think about what he said about comedy being a place where he could say anything, where he could be real, where he could be himself. That's what we all need, a place where we can speak without fear, a person we can be real with, a community that accepts us as we are. And if we don't have that, we need to find it. We need to build it. We need to create it. I think about the young people who watch him, the ones who are afraid to speak, the ones who are hiding. I hope they hear his words. I hope they find their voice. I hope they know that their truth matters, that they deserve to be heard, that they don't have to hide forever. I think about my own voice, about the times I've spoken and the times I've stayed silent, about the truths I've shared and the truths I've buried, about the freedom I've felt when I've been real and the weight I've carried when I've pretended. And I want to speak more. I want to be more real. I want to be more free. That's the video. That's the commentary. That's what I've been sitting with for the past however long. 30 minutes. Maybe more. I lost track. Because this video made me think about things I hadn't thought about in years. About language and truth. About silence and freedom. About the cost of speaking and the cost of staying quiet. And now I think I'll go to bed. But I won't sleep. Not right away. I'll lie there staring at the ceiling, thinking about Dave Chappelle, about the language of truth, about the courage to speak, about the freedom to be real. And maybe, just maybe, I'll think about my own language, about the words I use and the words I hide, about the truths I speak and the truths I bury, about the times I've been silent and the times I've been brave, about the person I want to be, the person who speaks truth, the person who is free. Good night. For real this time. No more scrolling. No more videos. Just me and the ceiling and the memory of Dave Chappelle's quiet voice and his wet eyes and his call to speak truth. And the hope that somewhere, in a world full of silence and fear, there are people who are speaking, people who are being real, people who are finding their voice. Good night. I was just about to close my laptop. I really was. The screen was dimming. My hand was on the mouse, and I had already said goodnight to the room. But then I saw the title again. Dave Chappelle, on I Can Say Anything in This Language. A different video, a longer version, more stories, more wisdom, more of Dave's truth laid bare. And I couldn't walk away. Not from him. Not when he's talking like this. Not when he's sharing the kind of insights that most people spend their whole lives searching for, but never find. So I pressed play, and now here I am, hours later, because this man has done it to me again. He's made me think, he's made me feel, he's made me look at my own words and ask myself what I'm saying and what I'm hiding. Let me tell you about this one. Let me walk you through it. Every single minute of it. This video starts differently. No couch, no quiet room. Dave is walking down a street, a quiet street, trees, houses, the sound of birds, the sound of his footsteps on the pavement. He's holding his phone, filming himself, and he's just talking, like he's thinking out loud, like he forgot anyone might ever see this, like he's having a conversation with himself, and we're lucky enough to be listening. He says, I've been thinking a lot about the words we use, the words we choose, the words we avoid. And I've realized that most people don't really speak. They perform. They say what they think people want to hear. They say what's safe. They say what's expected. But they don't say what they really think. They don't say what they really feel. They don't say what's really in their hearts. And that's not speaking. That's not language. That's noise. That's just filling the air with sounds that don't mean anything. He stops walking. He's standing in front of a house. A small house. Blue shutters, a porch, a swing. He looks at it for a long time. He doesn't say anything, and then he starts walking again. He says, I learned a long time ago that the most powerful words are the ones that scare you, the ones that make your heart race, the ones that make your palms sweat, the ones that you're afraid to say out loud. Because those words, those scary words, those are the ones that need to be spoken. Those are the ones that hold the truth. Those are the ones that can change everything. He turns a corner. The street gets quieter. More trees. More birds. He says, I remember the first time I said something on stage that I was afraid to say. I was terrified. My hands were shaking. My voice was trembling. I thought the audience would boo. I thought they would walk out. I thought I would lose everything. But I said it anyway. I said the scary thing. I spoke the truth that I had been hiding. And you know what happened? The audience didn't boo. They didn't walk out. They laughed. They cheered. They applauded. Because they recognized themselves in my truth. They had been hiding the same truth. They had been afraid to say the same words. And when I said them, when I gave them permission, they felt seen. They felt heard. They felt free. He stops. He's at a park now. A small park. A bench, a tree, a kid on a swing. He watches the kid for a moment. The kid doesn't know who he is, doesn't care, just swinging, Being a kid. Dave smiles. A soft smile. A remembering smile. He says, that kid doesn't know about fear yet. He doesn't know about hiding. He doesn't know about performing. He just swings. He just laughs. He just cries. He just is. And that's beautiful. That's how we all start. But then the world gets to us. The world teaches us to be afraid, to hide, to perform, to say what we're supposed to say, not what we really think. And we lose ourselves. We lose our voice. We lose our freedom. He starts walking again. The park is behind him now. The trees are getting taller. The houses are getting farther apart. He says, the language I speak, the language of truth, it's not about being funny. It's not about being clever. It's not about being popular. It's about being real. It's about being honest. It's about being willing to say the thing that nobody else will say, the thing that needs to be said, the thing that can heal, the thing that can connect, the thing that can set us free. He pauses. He looks at the camera. He says, I've been criticized for the things I've said. People have called me names. People have tried to silence me. People have written articles and made videos and started petitions. And I've seen it all. I've felt it all. But I've never stopped speaking, because I know that the truth is worth the cost. I know that being real is worth the risk. I know that my freedom is worth more than their approval. And I wouldn't trade it, not for anything. He wipes his eyes. He doesn't hide it. He says, I think about the young comedians who come to me for advice. They want to know how to be funny, how to be successful, how to make it. And I tell them, forget about being funny. Forget about being successful. Forget about making it. Focus on being real. Focus on being honest. Focus on saying the things that scare you, because that's where the magic is. That's where the connection is. That's where the freedom is. He looks at the camera, straight into it. He says, most people are afraid to say what they really think. They're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of being canceled. They're afraid of losing their jobs, their friends, their reputations. And I understand that. I've been afraid too. But I've learned that the cost of silence is higher than the cost of truth. The cost of staying quiet is your soul. The cost of hiding is your freedom. And once you pay that price, you never get it back. He pauses. He takes a breath. He looks up at the sky. He says, the language of truth is not easy. It's not comfortable. It's not safe. But it's real. It's honest. It's alive. And in that language, I can say anything. I can talk about race. I can talk about politics. I can talk about pain. I can talk about love. I can talk about fear. I can talk about hope. I can talk about everything that matters. And I don't have to filter myself. I don't have to edit myself. I don't have to perform. I just have to be. And that's the greatest gift. That's the greatest freedom. That's the greatest power. He reaches out. His hand touches the camera. The video ends. And I'm just sitting here, in the dark, my living room, my blanket, my cold tea, my tired eyes, my wet cheeks, thinking about Dave Chappelle, about the language of truth, about the courage it takes to speak the scary words, about the freedom that comes when you do. I think about what he said about the most powerful words being the ones that scare you. That's so true. The words that make your heart race, that make your palms sweat, that you're afraid to say out loud. Those are the words that need to be spoken. Those are the words that hold the truth. Those are the words that can change everything. I think about the first time I said something I was afraid to say. The fear, the trembling, the relief when it was over, the connection that followed. That's the magic. That's the power. That's the freedom. I think about the kid on the swing, not afraid yet, not hiding yet, just being. That's how we all start. And then the world gets to us. The world teaches us to be afraid, to hide, to perform, and we lose ourselves. But we can find ourselves again. We can find our voice again. We can find our freedom again. By speaking the truth, by saying the scary words, by being real. I think about the young people who are afraid to speak, the ones who are hiding, the ones who are performing. I hope they hear his words. I hope they find their courage. I hope they know that their truth matters, that they deserve to be heard, that they don't have to hide forever. That's the video. That's the commentary. That's what I've been sitting with for the past however long. 30 minutes. Maybe more. I lost track, because this video made me think about things I hadn't thought about in years, about language and truth, about fear and courage, about the words that scare us, and the freedom that comes when we say them. And now I think I'll go to bed. But I won't sleep, not right away. I'll lie there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Dave Chappelle, walking down a quiet street, talking about the words that scare us, talking about the freedom of truth, talking about the kid on the swing, about the young comedians, about the cost of silence and the price of speaking. And maybe, just maybe, I'll think about my own words, about the things I'm afraid to say, about the truths I've been hiding, about the freedom I've been missing, about the person I want to be, the person who speaks truth, the person who is real, the person who is free. I'll think about what he said, that the most powerful words are the ones that scare you. And I'll try to find those words. I'll try to speak them. I'll try to be brave. I'll try to be real. I'll try to be free. Good night. For real this time. No more scrolling. No more videos. Just me and the ceiling, and the memory of Dave Chappelle's quiet voice, and his wet eyes, and his walk down a quiet street, and the hope that somewhere, in a world full of silence and fear, there are people who are speaking, people who are saying the scary words, people who are being free. Good night.